Welcome back to my Final Fantasy XIV drama series. Today's drama story is about Morbid Nick. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Let's begin. For a little bit of background, I've been playing this game since Heavensward times. So many would call me somewhat of a veteran player. This is just to say that I already went through some drama with FCs before, but nothing was like what happened to the last I was in. About a year or so ago, I started playing Final Fantasy XIV again after a longer break due to finances and just disinterest in the game. I didn't have an FC, and since it was rather on and off phase of playing for me, I didn't feel like joining one anytime soon. While I was gathering some crystals from the market board, I got a tell by a person. I will refer to them as Nick. So Nick was recruiting for some new people for their FC and asked if I would like to join in. I said no the first time, stating the same reason I just mentioned earlier. Though about 2 or 3 weeks have passed, I have been playing pretty actively and felt like joining an FC this time. I remembered Nick and wondered if they would ask me again at some point, and as if they read my mind, I got another tell from them, asking the same question. Of course, they didn't remember me though. This time, I said gladly, and I officially joined the FC. Upon joining, I find out that the FC itself is actually pretty old and used to be much bigger, even split into multiple sister FCs. I heard of such FCs before and already wondered how the FC was so small compared to the golden days. There used to be a sister FC, but that one had about the same number of members as the main FC and was mostly seen as some sort of asset to my understanding at first. We'll come back to that part of the FC later. I was told by Nick that there was a lot of drama and lies spun to make them and the FC look bad, or while they were gone for months because of IRL reasons, the officers of the FC just stole things and ran to make a new FC and such. When asked for more details, they wouldn't be able to provide them, just repeating themselves over and over. Honestly, the more I talked to Nick, the more I felt very uneasy. Though Nick hasn't given me a real reason to feel that way, except just being a bit socially awkward and pretty untactful from time to time. Though their line of work would explain that fact. Nick works as a mortuary assistant, so someone who works at a funeral home, from what they told us. Honestly, I do feel a lot of respect for them in that regard, since working at that line of work can truly be taxing on one's mind. Not just that, they make it possible for the deceased and their relatives to have that peaceful end everyone deserves in one way or another. Though personally, I have a low tolerance when it comes to discussing any topics regarding that line of work. I instantly feel unwell and need to remove myself from such conversation. Nick tended to mention their line of work a couple times in a small detail in the IRL chat in the Discord server the FC has, so I decided to mute it. That is also where I started noticing the other members feeling uneasy around Nick as well. But back to the happenings in the game itself. I wasn't in the FC for a full month yet when Nick messaged me on Discord and asked me if I wanted to become an officer for the FC. I was completely caught off guard. I wasn't there for that long. Now I'm supposed to be an officer? I was hesitant at first. I pointed out that I had other obligations to look after and couldn't focus too much into helping the FC grow and such. Also, raising my concerns of how quickly that promotion came to me, I was then told by Nick that they see a lot of good in me and that I'm always trying to actually talk to people in the FC chat, which apparently was good enough for them to deduce what kind of person I am. I already got the feeling that they were either just too quick to judge a person or they were trying to sweet talk me into the position. Still, I was very unsure. I just told Nick to give me some time to think about it for a bit. Before agreeing to it, they tried to assure me that every officer is equal to the leader, and that the FC is just as much mine as it is theirs if I decided to be an officer. I considered the offer for about 3 or 4 days, then decided to accept it. So I was made into an officer in less than a month. After becoming an officer, I found out about some of the rules the FC had. If someone wasn't online for 30 days, they are to be kicked from the FC. If they announce themselves leaving, they are put into a special rank in the FC and only kicked out after 60 or 90 days. People are, of course, allowed to come back when they log on. This was the first time I saw a method of growing an FC like that, but while it worked on a technical level, I was never a big fan of that. I actually think that's like kind of a normal thing in FC these days, so not everyone will agree, but I personally don't really mind that. It's fine for FCs to want to have active members. But Nick insisted on it, asking each month if we have discharged people that hadn't logged on in a while. And by insisted, I really mean insisted. Even if we officers proposed to change that rule up, they were strongly against it. So much about equality. Not wanting any trouble and not seeing it as that much of an issue, we just decided to leave it. The FC wasn't quiet, nor was it really full of life when I was online. I tried to find some recruits and talk to people, but not much came from it. Nick was very rarely online, and I honestly felt very uneasy about and especially around them, making me glad to not see their name in-game when I was logged in. But in turn, making me feel bad because that's not a nice thing to feel about someone unless there is a good reason for it. While online, I would mostly do my thing and talk to the FC members I was good with from time to time. To one of them, a fellow officer as well, I felt mostly comfortable with, and I will refer to this person as Morgan. Now we are looking at around half a year after I joined the FC. Nick started messaging me twice with short one-sentence messages about how they would love to have an in-game wedding. I didn't respond to that much since I already had a feeling where this might be going. About 2 weeks later, I received a message from Nick that actually caught me off guard. The message was around the lines of, "I want to have an in-game wedding badly. My partner won't mind. Would your partner be okay with it? I want pictures and the experience." I instantly felt all that buildup of uncomfort and nervousness that I kept pushing down, boiling up, and I was already thinking about leaving the FC. This person didn't even feel the need to ask if I was interested or okay with it. They just looked for their personal gain and just figured I'd say yes. And after uncomfort, followed by slight anger, to be honest, I actually felt offended. But since I didn't want to overreact to them, considering how they can be and that they might not have chosen the right words, I went to DM Morgan about it. After telling them about the messages Nick had sent me, they told me that while really odd, Nick might have not meant it that way and that I should honestly tell them how uncomfortable that made me feel. So after gathering my thoughts and collecting them in a respectful but still firm in short text, I did just that. I'm not interested and you should ask someone else. I also said that I would only want an in-game wedding with either my partner or a friend I have an extremely close bond with. Then I also mentioned how uncomfortable this message made me feel, especially considering I have a partner. Nick answered just saying they understand, and they also explained they just wanted to have an event for the FC to look forward to, etc. Plus, the wedding experience was important to them, and they didn't feel comfortable marrying someone of their same sex due to their religion, which is why they chose me. In addition, they just like me and think I'm cool. Thanks, I guess. While this was an experience I still feel a bit weird about, I decided to accept that answer and we move on. A longer while has passed, new officers were recruited, and especially 2 of them put a lot of effort into creating an actual lively FC community with treasure map evenings and just community nights in general. I'll refer to one of them as Jamie. Those 2 were part of the sister FC I mentioned earlier. After the plots in Ishgard had opened up and the housing lottery was fixed, the FC managed to get a big plot. I say this in regard because that was the time I actually had some stuff happen IRL, making it impossible for me to continue my subscription to Final Fantasy XIV. I announced this in the officers chat, and not long after, I got a DM from Nick. They asked me if they should pay for my sub. I declined at first, since I don't really like to take money from people due to my experience with some people in that regard, plus it's not that great to do anyway. Though another month passed and I was really craving to play with my Final Fantasy XIV friends, so when Nick approached me a second time with the same proposal, I agreed after asking if it was truly alright for them. They assured me it was okay and just want to help their friend have a little fun in my rough times. I thanked Nick a lot afterwards and was happy to play. They did this twice for me, to which I am still thankful to a degree. More to that later. I don't think I'd ever agree to someone else paying for my Final Fantasy XIV subscription for me, because I don't want to feel like I owe them anything, you know? So once I was able to play more again, I got to hang out with everyone and also be present for the next big thing. After us officers talked in the Discord officers chat about a possible merge of both FCs, considering it would make the FC way more active and closer and makes planning events easier, we tried to convince Nick. It took a bit of convincing, but in the end, Nick agreed. The sister FC was made into some sort of asset holder since it had some good submarines and a medium plot, and the people from that FC moved over to the main one. Once that happened, there was so much life, and honestly, we had a much better time. People were active and quickly becoming friends. The events Jamie planned were packed more, and I also invited some of my close friends into the FC once they started playing the game as well. Nick wasn't present whatsoever during it all and let us do our thing mostly. But once we decided to change the mess of the interior we had in our mansion, which Nick created, Nick started to be more hesitant in giving us free room to work with. They had some weird and slightly petty remarks to the great work we put in. Only room they were somewhat happy with was the bathroom, and I designed it. But Nick would complain about the lack of bathtubs. There were 3 though, but Nick felt there wouldn't be enough for people to hang out in. What? Bathtubs? To this day, I don't understand why they think that people would want to mostly hang out in a bathroom instead of a sitting area. This just gives off very creepy vibes to me. The officers constantly tried to reason with them about different things, but to no avail. We all put so much effort into this FC, some more than others. And while I was working on the basement area, Nick made some really questionable design choices behind my work. Even going so far to fill out the rest of our available item slots in the building, which made it pretty difficult, if not impossible, to continue working on what I was doing. One might ask why we didn't remove Nick's work then. Well, they insisted again on how much they wanted everything they placed to stay, so we kind of couldn't touch it whatsoever. This took my whole motivation for the project, and I left it at that. And I was certainly not the only one who felt that way. So now, the finale. Finally, haha. About a week or more ago now, Jamie, who was the main person to approach Nick with our concerns, kudos to them, mentioned a little problem about the tag the FC has. I will not go into detail what the tag is, since it would instantly call out the FC and I don't want any harassment sent towards them. Let's just say the tag might have given the wrong impression of what the FC was truly about, and Jamie wanted to propose a tag change. Long story short, everyone was just brainstorming new tag names while Nick was ranting about how upsetting this was to them that we would even need to do this. Some not so great comments came out from that, but I decided to not fight those since I'd be arguing against a wall. The other thing that was important in that huge discussion was how everyone else wanted a different tag than Nick. But Nick was completely against it since it didn't fit their idea of the FC. The ironic part of this is that most of us didn't even realize that the FC was supposed to represent whatever Nick was going for. So after Nick pretty much argued against us and didn't want to listen, they just put their foot down and ended the discussion with their own choice of the new tag. While it was a bit annoying and demotivating to be told that we all are so equal and that the FC is as much ours as it is Nick's, while this was clearly not the case, that wasn't what actually tipped the iceberg. It really wasn't. Nick, if you hear/read this and you can recognize yourself here, this was not the reason for what came next, all in caps. I was playing a different game at the time and just checked the FC Discord when I noticed that Jamie had left it. I was completely caught by surprise by that, considering how much effort they put into everything and making people feel welcome and such. I asked Morgan where Jamie went and what happened. They told me that Jamie left because they never felt comfortable with Nick and how he controlled everything and how they didn't like the things Nick wrote in the IRL chat. They just couldn't stay any longer. Morgan tried to salvage the situation, but apparently Nick just went too far. I, of course, asked if Morgan would also leave, and they answered with a firm yes. They also said more officers will leave, and most likely other members as well. Since they are all my FF14 friends, it didn't take long for me to also decide to leave. But I first debated whether to wait a couple of days first. Though after a while, I became curious as to what Morgan meant with the IRL chat. Since I had muted it so long ago, I never even looked into much in there. Curiosity took hold of me and I went to go check it out. After I finished reading, my uncomfortable feeling around Nick changed to actual fear. This person could truly be dangerous. I will not say what they said in detail. For me personally, it was too disturbing. But in short, Nick was boasting about how they wouldn't feel any remorse when they would end a person's life who deserved it. Holy shit. What the fuck? That's messed up. And that their line of work had dulled their emotions to that degree. That's so scary. That they would rather have not alive people on the street than poop. And how in love they are with weapons. Nick was discussing this with someone who had actually been in a war zone and lived through traumatic experiences. This person was telling Nick that it was very disturbing to hear Nick say these things. Again, I have filtered the things they said for this story and to summarize it, but believe me, the way Nick had said their opinion was more extreme in some sentences. Dude, I would be freaked out if I was her, like talking to this person and then not seeing any of those things because, you know, they had muted it and had no idea. And then finding that out, it's like you're realizing this is like a completely different person or something. Like, I didn't even know that about them. A little shook, you know? Once I saw that, I couldn't even wait a minute longer. I demolished my room in the FC, left a big message in the FC chat for the online members to see, and left. Not long after I did that, I left Nick a message in Discord telling them that I'm still thankful for their help, but that I can't be around a person that would feel the way they do and that I don't wish them anything bad, etc. When I left, way more members left as well. Even people who hadn't logged on in a while, just logged on to leave the FC as soon as possible. Some officers stayed for a bit to see it all unfold, and oh boy, Nick didn't understand one bit why we all left. They persisted in the narrative that we left because Jamie wanted to actually try and be the leader, and that we didn't like Nick changing the FC tag into something we all didn't agree on. Nick would also try and message people on Discord or in-game, trying to either win them back or insult them in some way. Everyone tried their best to tell them how uncomfortable Nick made people feel, and that the thing they said about the guns and stuff was the reason people left. Nick persisted in their delusions though, saying that in their country/area they live in, it's completely normal and that our cultures just differ too much for us to understand. That it is us that are being unreasonable, not them being extremely unsettling and disturbing. Once people realized they can't get through to Nick, they just blocked them. Since I already figured it would be pointless to argue, I didn't even try to talk to Nick. I had already blocked them everywhere I could. After the Great Exodus, as I lovingly call it, we all decided to create a new FC while waiting for the 24-hour period where one can't create nor join an FC. More allegations were thrown around, and Nick even claimed that we had stolen about 125 million gil from the FC that way. In some messages to other people who were more open to talk to them in a more neutral manner, Nick exclaimed how they still think some people would return to them. Me included. Why me? Because Nick paid 2 of my subs and I should feel some obligation to them as if I owe them something? To that I say, F you, Nick. You told me to just take it and not worry about a thing. You made it seem like it truly just came from a place of care. If your intentions were always on the side of making me some sort of ally, then you failed. Nick carried on and showed very much how they see everyone just as assets to get a gain from, not as people. They then removed all the work we had done for the interior design in the FC house and even the garden area just to make sure every trace of us and our work was gone. This made us realize how much truth really was behind some of the drama stories we heard from the other FC members and of this FC in general. After some time from that old FC of Nick's, we are doing very well so far and are looking forward to soon buying our first FC house. After just a week, we managed to get our FC to rank 20, which shows how active we truly have been. There have been other really weird stories from other people who had hung out with Nick, but I feel like I've already painted a picture well with the story, so I won't retell those. We all have been much happier and more active in Discord as well, even hanging out in voice calls, which we hadn't done in the other FC due to the uncomfortable aura surrounding Nick. So all in all, a happy ending. The last thing I want to say though, I really hope Nick will find help for themselves. Their behavior and thought process is very concerning, and in some cases, even cult-like behavior. I don't wish them any ill. I just want them to realize that there is something not right, and I really hope they'll find what they need to get to a better place. Though I am very doubtful they will. The end. It was a very long story, but I do understand why it was long. It was like their full journey, start to end, with Nick, their perspective. Yeah, dude, the stuff he said in that Discord, man, I'd freak out. I would also just get up and leave. Like, oh my God. I'd be shook that I had been talking to this person that had said such things. Or even was like standing next to them and stuff, you know? Like in the game, and people saw that chat channel in the Discord. Like if you were standing next to that person in game, they would have assumed that you were okay with the things that they said. So yeah, I'd be really disturbed. What country are they from? Mordor? As someone who's trying to put an FC together right now, this sounds so scary. It does, yeah. It's hard to manage FCs for real. You need Discord moderation. What was the FC tag? Murder? Yikes. M-U-R-D-E-R. No, you can't. It's murder 6 letters. I don't know what it could have been. Maybe something disturbing. You know, I read that story last night, chat. And because it was nighttime, I don't know, I spooked myself out. I was like, it's like I'm reading a Are You Afraid of the Dark campfire story last night. Final Fantasy 14 edition. I mean, for me, that would be one of the scary stories I've read in the game so far. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about this Final Fantasy 14 drama story. If you have any of your own drama stories that you'd like me to share and read out anonymously, feel free to reach out to my Discord, discord.gg/Pathra. And a big thank you to my kind members who support my YouTube content.